Good afternoon, grantees, subrecipients, evaluators, federal staff, presenters, and all other conference participants. My name is Courtney Gaskins, and I'm the director of the Division of Optimal Adolescent Development. Now, I used to be Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention. Welcome to day 2 of the conference. This next section will be facilitated by LeBretia White, APP Program Manager, our Communications Manager, Owen Burns, and Jessica Johnson, one of APP's project officers. This afternoon, I will spend some time introducing the federal staff, and then LeBretia, Owen, and Jessica will provide you with information on the FY21 funding opportunity announcements and awards, the COVID-19 flexibilities, highlights on PrEP and SRE research and evaluation projects, updates on training and technical assistant products, new products available through We Think Twice campaign, contractors that support the APP program. Before we share updates, I would like to introduce to you the Family and Youth Services Bureau and Adolescent Prevention Pregnancy staff. You heard from Debbie Powell, who welcomed us generously yesterday. Debbie is our Acting Associate Commissioner and Deputy Associate Commissioner. Many of you are familiar with Risa Matthews, who was formerly the APP Program Director. Risa has moved on, and she is now the Director of the Division of Evaluation Data and Policy, and will continue to be involved in the APP program, research, and evaluation projects. I'd also like to introduce the management team of APP, and most of you know LeBretia White, our Program Manager, who's going to be speaking later, Leander Skeet, who's our new Program Manager, Vernay Martin, who is our Senior Program Specialist. Also, our POs who work on the project, our federal project officers, Tanya Matthews, my screen is jumping from technology, Jessica Johnson, Christina Zakor, Letitia Winston, Patrice Moss, Latonia Karat, Alexandra Washington, Ricky Richards, Allison Zedrick, and Megan Hill. And I'd also like to take the time to introduce to you Tarshika Thompson, who supports us administratively, and again, Owen Burns, who is our communications manager. So I'm going to turn things over to LeBretia and Jessica and Owen. And first, LeBretia is going to talk about the FY FOA announcements and awards.
Thanks so much, Courtney, and good afternoon, everyone. As Courtney shared, I will begin with providing some critical updates that we hope grantees will find to be helpful, beginning with some very exciting news. We're ecstatic on this afternoon to report to you that most of the adolescent pregnancy prevention funding opportunity announcements, based on the forecasts that were made available earlier, those were published on this afternoon and can be accessed at acf.hhs.gov/grants. You will find published announcements for our PrEP Innovative Strategies Program, or PREAS, Competitive PrEP, Tribal PrEP, and Competitive Sexual Risk Avoidance Education, or SRAE. The General Departmental SRAE funding opportunity announcement should be published later today. If not later today, definitely by tomorrow. So again, I'm certain you are, but we are most ecstatic about that breaking news that the funding opportunity announcements have been published. The links actually to the funding opportunity announcements will be added to the chat box if you need to access that information. So feel free to check the chat box. And per usual, we will also be sending e-blasts to grantees, making you aware of the availability of those new opportunities. The State PrEP and Title V State Sexual Risk Avoidance Education FY 2021 grants have been awarded, and a supplemental award for Title V State SRAE grants will be disseminated on this week. The supplement adds approximately 11% to the Title V State SRAE FY 2021 allocations. So another bit of good news there. As it relates to our non-competing continuation awards, all of our grantees, Title V competitive SRAE, as well as our general departmental SRAE grantees, have submitted their non-competing continuations as applicable, and those are moving through as normal through the approval process. So funding will be made available soon across the board. Next slide. COVID-19 related updates. We thought we would share some updated information with you. Some you may already be familiar with. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have made 2 resources available on their website that may respond to some questions and concerns you may be having regarding the vaccines for children and teens. There's been a lot of information in the media relative to vaccines for at least 15-year-olds, and as well as some children and teens as well. And so that information is available. Also, there's information that provides guidance and tools to help school personnel as well as in-school service providers with information to make decisions to protect not only the students who actually are as well your program participants, but as well some protective information relative to staff. Owen is going to cover information or provide you with more information related to resources available to grantees later on in today's presentation. But I also want to interject that there are a number of resources on the Exchange website to support hybrid as well as virtual programming for youth. So please feel free to check out those resources and use that information as applicable to your projects. In addition to those resources, the Office of Management and Budget issued a memorandum on March 19th to address existing flexibilities for grantees impacted by COVID-19. And so as we go to the next slide, I want to share how that information is relative to some forthcoming information we will be making available to grantees. As many of you know, we did share, the APP program had shared FAQs, frequently asked questions related to COVID-19. The APP program has updated the COVID-19 flexibilities or for the frequently asked questions that were previously shared in light of the most recent OMB memorandum, and will disseminate the updated frequently asked questions to you later this week. Some of the highlights we thought we would share with you today for the ongoing and new flexibilities include the following. First, grantees and subrecipients must continue to ensure costs claimed under the grant meet the terms and conditions of the award. The budget must align with expenses that are allowable, reasonable, allocable under your individual grants. And so any changes to the budget must be pre-approved by ACF, and budget changes must comply with the guidelines and the applicable funding opportunity announcement and authorizing legislation for your grant. If you have questions relative to what is allowable, reasonable, or allocable, please reach out to your project officer or grants specialist for assistance. Again, there continues to be some flexibilities in that regard. However, within the Administration on Children and Families, we are requiring pre-approval for any modifications related to COVID to your budget. Okay. Secondly, upon request, grantees may receive a 90-day extension to submit the next round of fiscal and performance progress reports. So reports due October 2021 are subject to an extension of not more than 90 days or through December 2021 with ACF prior approval. And so it's not to be taken for granted that you will automatically have an extension beyond October. A request has to be submitted and approval granted. Another update we'd like to share with you, there is an option for discretionary grantees with awards slated to expire September 2021 to request a no-cost extension. No-cost extensions must be requested and approved prior to September 29th, 2021. So ideally, grantees should be working now, if you haven't already, with your project officers to submit any necessary requests for no-cost extensions. Again, I just want to remind you, the FAQs or frequently asked questions will be emailed to grantees by their assigned project officers. The FAQs will address programmatic and fiscal questions, as well as provide answers to related to performance measures and evaluation activities. At this time, Jessica Johnson will provide updates on performance measures and research and evaluation activities for our PrEP and SRAE programs. Jessica?
Thank you, LeBretia. We have some exciting research and evaluation work in the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program. Today, I'd like to share announcements, highlight products that have been recently released, and new initiatives. Starting with the PrEP initiatives, I have an important announcement related to performance measures. The next data submission for PrEP performance measures will be July 1st through August the 16th. PrEP grantees will submit structure, cost, and support measures for the past year, attendance, reach, and dosage measures collected between January and July, and participant surveys collected from January to July. On Thursday, July 1st, from 3 p.m. to 4:30 Eastern Time, there will be a webinar for PrEP grantees on submitting data to the PIM system. Please look out for the webinar invitation with information on how to register for this webinar. Next slide. PrEP legislation, we're really excited. We have been working really hard to try to bring innovation to the research and evaluation side of our work. We're excited to announce that we recently released our first digital data report. The PrEP Performance Measures Interactive Brief highlights findings from performance measures collected between 2013 and 2017. And as you see on the screen, we provided the link for you to go directly to that report and review our outcomes from the first cohort of PrEP. Next slide. PrEP legislation requires that grantees educate youth on at least 3 of the 6 adulthood preparation subjects. Under the PMAPS contract, we develop conceptual models to help PrEP grantees understand and select APS subjects, develop APS-related content, and target specific outcomes. Last summer, several of you attended workshops where we shared the adult preparation subject conceptual models. We're happy to announce that we have released the final report that includes all 6 models and the unifying framework. We have also developed 3 briefs to translate the conceptual models research to practice. These briefs include topics such as financial literacy, tailoring APS with pregnant and parenting youth, and integrating positive youth development into PrEP programming. One of FYSB's new initiatives is developing curricula for foster parents and curricula for youth with intellectual disabilities. These efforts are expected to be released in the summer and fall of 2022. Next slide. And here on this page, there they go. Here are snapshots of our report and our 3 briefs, which we recently released. Next slide. So now we're going to highlight work on the SRAE side. Another critical announcement related to SRAE performance measures. The next data submission period will be July 1st through August the 16th. SRAE grantees will submit structure, cost, and support measures for the past year, attendance, reach, and dosage measures collected between January and July, and participant surveys collected from January to July. On Wednesday, June 30th, from 3 p.m. to 4:30 Eastern Time, we will be having a webinar. Please look out for information on how to register for this webinar. Next slide. ACF's Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation has partnered with FYSB on a lot of our initiatives. We would like to acknowledge them on all of this work. They have also partnered with the Office of Population Affairs to develop conceptual models for sexual risk avoidance and sexual risk cessation. The purpose of this work was to explore factors that influences youth's sexual decision-making and guide efforts to prevent youth risk behaviors and promote optimal health. The OPRE and OASH partnership is currently developing a sexual risk cessation program model to guide policymakers, program and curricula developers, and program implementers in creating and delivering programming to ensure sexual risk cessation among youth. Next slide. And finally, with FYSB's SRAE National Evaluation Contract, we have been working with 8 grantees in a continuous quality improvement pilot study. The study began in March with 8 grantees identifying a challenge they wanted to address, and the grantees have been receiving intensive support to build organizational capacity to use the CQI process. This involves individual technical assistance and peer networking and support. The CQI pilot study will inform the development of additional CQI resources, which we hope to release next year. In addition, the Serene contract has published 2 products recently. One is the first SRAE National Evaluation Newsletter, and you see this snapshot here on the left. And the second document is a tip sheet to help grantees determine if the program is ready for an impact evaluation. And if you have questions about any of these deliverables, please see the links that are embedded in the PowerPoint. And I think they are also posted in the chat as well. I will now turn the presentation over to Owen Burns, our communications manager.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So Jessica showcased a number of great research and evaluation projects that, as she mentioned, you can find links to in the chat, as well as on the websites on the respective slides. I would like to talk about some other resources, starting with the Exchange. Most of you are probably familiar, but for those who aren't, it's the destination website for APP programming information and tools. Along with access to TNTA information, the site hosts various types of resources like tip sheets, webinars, training sessions, infographics. We also have the comment wall, which we encourage everybody to log on and use, which helps facilitate conversations between grantees. There's also the event calendar, somewhere where we post all APP events and relevant health observances. The website has sort of 2 faces. There's a public-facing portion of the Exchange, as well as a password-protected site with even more material specifically relevant to grantees. So visit and explore. And if you don't have a password, talk to your primary point of contact with your grantee, and you can request access to the password-protected side of the Exchange. And as an FYI, we're in the midst of completing a site upgrade, so keep an eye for a more streamlined Exchange soon. So on the next slide, we're going to look at the APS resource guide. Jessica mentioned APS in some of the research projects that were undertaken. This is a resource guide which provides information on conceptual models for the 6 adult preparation subjects and serves as a resource for prep implementation. Each section includes the relevant conceptual model and definition, key topics, examples of implementation activities, tips for integration, curricular resources, and other online resources. Each section is standalone, but they do have some overlapping components. So moving on to our next slide, we're going to see a sampling of some additional prep resources. These resources include Think Twice About Sexting infographic, which highlights what sexting is, why it's risky, and how teens can protect themselves and others from its negative impacts. To help provide resources and strategies to address the needs of pregnant and parenting youth, we developed the Working with Pregnant and Parenting Youth tip sheet. The Incorporating Teen Dating Violence Toolkit offers grantees and youth service providers information to incorporate teen dating violence and prevention into their projects, especially relevant during Teen Dating Violence Prevention Month each February. The Healthy Relationships infographic you see here describes characteristics of relationships from healthy to unhealthy to abusive, and provides tips and strategies to support healthy relationships, as well as resources youth can reach out to for help. So next, we're going to focus on some SRAE resources with a series of tip sheets that you see here on topics such as positive decision-making and understanding how to leverage social media in your programming by getting social savvy. The Engaging Parents and SRAE tip sheet assists parents as they engage with their youth to promote optimal health. And the Curriculum Assessment and Enhancement tip sheet shares field experience and practical application grantees have implemented in their SRAE programming. That tip sheet is one part of a series, including a webinar and other resources as well. You'll find those on the resources page of the Exchange. Matter of fact, all of these things can be found there. Finally, in the upper right there, the Creating Safe Spaces is a facilitator's guide to trauma-informed programming. It's a very interactive and informative resource for facilitators who deliver school and community-based or one-on-one programs to young people. On our next slide, we're going to see a little bit about the topical training, not tropical training, topical training for both programs. In the first bullet under each program, you'll see the topical training that took place in February. The proposed PrEP topical training is planned for September of this year and will focus on sustainability, while the SRE topical training is planned for August and will focus on the science of hope. Both dates and the specific topics are still a little bit fluid, but will be posted to the Exchange once finalized. So next, I want to have a little bit of an informal quiz about the APP Connect e-newsletter. Did everyone receive it on May 24th? It's a great resource for news, information, and developments about the APP program, and features things like grantee spotlights, program highlights, and other news about APP. If you didn't get it by email, we'll have it available online very soon. And please visit the sign-up link on the Exchange and add your name to the distribution so you get the next edition. Now we're going to move on to the We Think Twice campaign. This has been mentioned a couple of times, and hopefully some of you were able to attend the session yesterday that RTI put on that went into some great detail about the site. Hopefully you're all familiar with it, but if not, go to wethinktwice.org to check it out. It was designed by youth for youth, and by that I mean we solicited their input on all facets of the site and its contents, and continue to do so as we develop new features regularly, content that is targeted specifically to speak to youth. The site's a great resource, so we hope we see a good increase in our Instagram followers as you introduce this program, introduce this to your programs and integrate it into your activities at the conference. You can see from the slide here, the site has been very successful, reaching over 12 million youth to date, or rather receiving over 12 million visits to date, and reaching 4.6 million youth. We have almost 2,500 followers to our Instagram page so far, and the youth I mentioned, the We Think Twice community I mentioned, the youth contributing to the development of the site, that still goes on today. So if you have youth in your program who are interested in joining, they can do so at the link thehive.cmnty.com, and they will earn points towards gift cards and will really be instrumental in helping shape our campaign. So we want to show you some of the content that I mentioned next. The first graphic you'll see here on the upper left is the Create Your Vision National Art Contest, where we asked teens to express their goals for the coming year through art. We got over 150 submissions from teens across the country, a great response, and some really great artwork. And this contest really boosted our Instagram followers too. The Healthy Relationships Challenge provides information on healthy and unhealthy behaviors in friendships and romantic relationships, and where to find appropriate resources. What kind of leader are you? Is a fun, interactive quiz to help teens determine if they have people-oriented or results-oriented leadership style. Our mental health and COVID-19 page was implemented in response to how the pandemic has really impacted younger people. And our January was National Mentoring Month, so We Think Twice released the Find Your Mentors tool, which helps youth identify and reach out to mentors who will help them explore their interests and achieve their goals. Finally, the mental health facts page, not live yet, but coming soon, is a response to feedback we received from teens that more mental health resources were needed. I mentioned getting input from youth and the We Think Twice community. This is a prime example of leveraging that resource to create content and meaningful information for youth. And it's another reason to be sure you come back and visit We Think Twice regularly so you can see that when it does go live. The final slide I'm going to address before handing it back to LeBretia is about some accolades. It was just recently announced, and this may even be news to some of our FYSB staff, that the We Think Twice website has won a first place prize in the NAGC Blue Pencil and Gold Screen Awards in the website category. In addition, our infographic Words Matter, Actions Speak took a second place award in the infographic category. So congratulations to the APP program, FYSB, and to our contractor RTI, who was a very big and helpful contributor to all of that. So now I'm going to actually turn it back over to LeBretia for our last few slides and perhaps some Q&A.
Outstanding. Thanks, Owen and Jessica, for sharing those very important highlights and updates related to the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program. As you all, that's a lot of information that was shared in a short period of time. So we're certain that you may have some questions. But before we move on to question and answer, I just want to encourage all of our APP grantees to continue to take advantage of the programmatic focus training and technical assistance services that are available through RTI for our PrEP grantees, and those similar services that are, and same services really, that are available through public strategies for our SRAE grantees. There's been a significant amount of information generated, meetings, cluster calls, individual technical assistance. We're now moving into virtual site monitoring visits. And so all of that is aided and supported by our TNTA training and technical assistance providers. But again, I encourage you to continue to take advantage of the group services, but also if you have an individual need in your project, to feel free to reach out to your project officer for a referral for the technical assistance and support. Okay, next slide. So as Owen shared, there's a plethora of resources, lots of information that's available on the Exchange website. It's our go-to site to connect for resources, information, what's happening within the APP program, and for grantees also to connect with one another. In addition to the Exchange and the two contractors I just spoke about, we have other adolescent pregnancy prevention program support as it relates to medical accuracy reviews. We are actually in process of putting a new contract in place for medical accuracy reviews across all of our FYSB funding streams for our new grant programs that are forthcoming in the fall. We also we have contractors that are working to support grantees across funding streams as it relates to performance measure data collection, as well as your reporting. And so for SRAE, that contractor is for SRAE, that contractor is for performance measures, it's public strategies, and for evaluation, it's Mathematica for our PrEP program. We have Mathematica working with those PrEP grantees for both their performance measures as well as their evaluation efforts. So again, additional contractor provider support that's available to you. Next slide. All right, and so we're going to close out, and before we close out, we actually are going to go into our Q&A session. And at this time, Meredith Cruz with RTI will be generating or feeding those generated questions to us, and we will do our very best to provide responses. So yes, it does look like we have a few minutes for some of the questions that you may have. So feel free to enter those questions into the chat.
All right, thank you to the FYSB team for sharing that with us today. We do have a couple questions already. I'll try to group them by the person who spoke about them. So LeBretia, I have a couple for you. There's a question about when the no-cost extension is due. It says, is the no-cost extension due 45 days prior to the end of FY21?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. But I encourage grantees, as soon as they are able to make that determination on whether or not no cost extension may be needed, to begin generating the necessary documentation for submission, having those conversations with your project officer as well on what documentation is needed and your rationale for the no cost extension. So yes, that is absolutely true, 45 days before, but please do not wait until the very last time period or deadline. We encourage you to do that now. Thank you, Meredith. And hopefully that answers.
I think so. I'll let you know if there's any more. Another question for you, LeBretia, was whether there would be a separate funding announcement for youth in foster care and intellectual disabilities coming out in July or August.
Okay. No, there will not be a funding opportunity announcement specific to, and you may be referencing some of the information shared by Jessica relative to new curricula that we are developing and making available for foster parents as well as for youth with intellectual disabilities. So that's not tied to a funding opportunity announcement. Actually, one of our contractors is working with us on the development of that curricula that we'll make available to the general public.
Great, thank you. I'll take the next
Sure.
question for Jessica. There's a question about the data collection for year one. Should that be January to August of 2021?
So the data collection submission period this summer is exactly as stated on the slide. I'm assuming that because the question said year one, that this might be a new grantee that was just funded in September of 2020. So for those grantees who were just funded in October 2020 was your start date, you would report as illustrated in the slides. It's the same reporting for everyone. And so you would report your structure, cost, and support measures for the past year, and attendance, reach, and dosage, and participant surveys that you collected from January to July.
Thank you, Jessica. The next two questions are grouped. They're kind of both about the exchange. And Owen, I'm happy to answer them, or I can let them because I also know the answer. There's a question about whether sub-grantees can get access to the exchange, and also what materials are in the password protected section of the exchange.
So let's do a handoff. I'll take the second question. The materials that are in the password protected section are things like, well, for example, the files and resources relevant to past APP conferences is in there. So you can find the session recordings and presentations from the 2017 through 2020 APP conferences. There's also a number of tip sheets and webinars and things that really only apply to grantees, and so they're not made available to the public. Other things that are less specific to grantee and program implementation are on the public-facing side of the exchange. And if you want to answer the one about subrecipients, that would be terrific.
Sure. So yes, sub-grantees, subrecipients can have access to the exchange. You just have to ask the point of contact for your grant. So at your granting organization, they can add an account for you. And if you're having any trouble, you can always reach out to apptta@rti.org. All right. There is a question about recent changes to project officers and who grantees should contact in the interim. I don't know if there's any guidance you'd like to offer there.
Sure, absolutely. I'll take that question. Thanks, Meredith. So if you have questions regarding who your assigned project officer is, we have had some recent staff transition. And if you're not absolutely certain, please feel free to reach out to myself, LeBretia White, or to Leander Skeet, who is also a program manager within the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program, and we'll be happy to assist you with that. Okay.
There are a couple questions about no-cost extensions that I'll let you all respond to. There's whether the no-cost extension grantees ending in September 2021.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Meredith?
It says, is the no-cost extension for grant ending in September 2021? So I guess for grants that have an end date.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're exactly right. So for any grant that is due to expire, the project period actually ends September 29th, 2021. Those grant organizations do have an opportunity to submit a request for a no-cost extension.
All right. And I think there's a question about whether the, just wanted to confirm that the state prep formula funding is not eligible for a no-cost extension. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We have not received any guidance to support extensions for state prep or Title V state SRAE.
And then I see, can the supplemental SRAE funds be used through September 30th of 2022?
So the supplemental funds will cover the periods of FY21 and 22. So yes, those funds, the supplemental funds that will be awarded for Title V state SRAE will then can be used until the end of the current grant project period. So that would be September 2022.
Great. And there's also a general question about what the no-cost extension is. I don't know if we might want to put back up that slide. Do you remember what slide number that was? Maybe slide 2 or maybe 4?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it may not provide enough information for that particular question, but a no-cost extension, I think the question was, what is it exactly? It really provides an opportunity for grantees that are in the final year of their project period to take a look at where they are with their activities, where they are with funding that's available on their grant, and making a determination as to whether or not they can continue programming beyond the project period to complete any unfinished activities. I would also encourage grantees to take a look at the grantee guidance document that we share and make available for each of our funding streams. There's additional information relative to the no-cost extension in that document. And as usual, definitely reach out to your project officer or grant specialist for additional guidance.
Okay, we just got one more question about the supplemental Title V funds. If you could explain those again.
Absolutely. So what has occurred is we had additional funding available based on our appropriations. The appropriations did not increase, but we had additional funding available within the appropriations that were provided, and have an opportunity to increase the allocations for each of the states for the Title V state SRAE program. And so it equates to approximately a little over 11% will be added to our state SRAE grants for this current project period. So good news, right? Hopefully you consider that good news, more money. It's helpful with continuing your projects. Okay.
An increase is always good.
Yes.
There's another question about understanding when their grants expire. Would the best thing to do be for them to reach out to their project officer if there's a question there?
Absolutely. Reach out to their project officer or grant specialist, but also they should take a look at their grant award, notice of award document. It includes the start and end date, when the grant was actually awarded, and when that grant project period ends. But feel free to reach out to us if you have questions in that regard.
And there's a question about a new FOA for SRAE, and I think you said that the general departmental one is anticipated soon, but are there any others that you're anticipating?
No, we had forecast 5 of our funding streams wherein we would make funds available for a grant opportunity. And so I'll repeat those, it's these competitive prep innovative strategies, or PRIUS, tribal prep, general departmentals, SRAE, and our Title V competitive SRAE. So we have 7 funding streams that we support within the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program. All of the discretionary funding streams that I just mentioned, we will have competitions for. And actually, for our state programs, there was no funding opportunity announcement, new opportunity announcement for this year. We will likely have a funding opportunity announcement published for Title V state SRAE next fiscal year, but for this year, only the 5 discretionary programs will be competed.
Great. I think I see one last question about, we only have about a minute left, about whether supplemental funds will trickle down to recipients, and whether you all have any insight on that.
So our authority within the Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program with the Administration for Children and Families is with the Prime Grant Organization, and it will be that organization's decision-making and discretion to look at their budget and activities that align with funding opportunity announcement, the funding opportunity announcement, and the legislation to make determinations on how that additional funding will be utilized. So we cannot confirm whether or not, or even mandate that the primes provide additional funding to their subrecipients. It's at the discretion of that prime grant organization.
And I think that's all of our questions.
Oh, very good. Very good. So those were all great questions. And thank you, Meredith, for helping us facilitate us through those. That was extremely helpful as well. Well, we're going to close out. And in closing out this session, I just want to let everyone know that we really appreciate your attention and hope that you found this information that was shared this afternoon to be helpful to you in carrying out your programs, your projects. I want to encourage you to continue the critical work of providing youth with information and skills training that's so important and so much needed. To ultimately have them and help them to shine as diamonds at all times, but especially during these times of great pressure. And so as our theme for the conference indicates, is we have a prime opportunity, and you as grantees actually have that opportunity on the ground level, where you're really making impact and having positive effect in your work with young people, is to utilize what may be considered a pandemic and inopportune time to create opportunities for youth again to shine and create those opportunities for them to be able to exercise their leadership and to be able to empower them and support them in being resilient, because it's required. Let me just say, it's required resiliency on the part of all of us over the past 12 plus months in being able to carry out kind of life as needed on a day-to-day basis during the pandemic. So you've done a royal job in that regard, staying connected with young people and their families and the community. And we just encourage you to continue to do that. At this time, we're going to go ahead and close out. Again, thank you for your participation in this session. Thank you for participating in the conference. I learned that we had over 900 registrants, and at any given time throughout the conference, we're seeing upwards of over 700 participants. So thank you so much. In a virtual atmosphere, I think that is commendable. I will say also, please contact your project officer should you have any further questions that we were unable to address for you on today, or questions that may come up that you may think of after this session. And I encourage you to also enjoy the remainder of the conference, enjoy the remainder of this day, and continue to take good care. Thank you all so much.